Artemisia Gentileschi was born in Rome on July 8, 1593. She was the oldest daughter of her parents, Prudencia di Ottaviano Montoni, and the Tuscan painter Orazio Gentileschi. She displayed an enthusiasm and talent for painting from a young age, which her father encouraged. During her adolescence, Gentileschi took inspiration from her father, whose style was strongly influenced by Caravaggio. After her mother died when she was only 12 years old, Gentileschi was raised exclusively by her father and spent most of her time in the company of Orazio and his contemporaries. The earliest of Gentileschi's surviving works is one of her most famous. This is Susanna and the Elders, which she completed in 1610 at the age of 16. The scene represents the biblical story of Susanna, a young married woman who was bathing in her garden. She is blindsided and harassed by two older men who have entered her garden to demand sexual favors. When she refused, the men threatened to ruin her reputation and accused her of adultery, which is ironic considering they were trying to get her to commit adultery in the first place. When painted by men, Susanna is commonly depicted as unaware of her peeping toms, or sometimes even appears to welcome their presence. Gentileschi's rendition makes it clear that the attention is unwelcome and that Susanna is in distress. Considering she was 16 when she painted this and spent a lot of time in her father's workshop surrounded by his male contemporaries, it's probably not a stretch to guess Gentileschi had been dealing with her own share of unwelcome male attention. Only a year after completing Susanna, Gentileschi would encounter her own reputation-destroying elders. When she was 17 in 1611, Gentileschi was raped in her father's home by one of his contemporaries. The punishment for rape at the time was to force the rapist to marry his victim, thereby restoring her honor, which he ruined in the first place with his actions, some punishment. Gentileschi's rapist was only brought to trial after about 9 months of stringing her and Orazio along with promises of marriage. Orazio only decided to seek justice for his daughter after her rapist definitively declared that he had no intention of going through with the marriage. Gentileschi participated in that trial and was tortured with thumbscrews, supposedly to verify her testimony. After 7 months, Gentileschi's rapist was eventually convicted and banished from Rome, though there seems to be no record of his sentence ever being enforced. A month after the end of the trial, when she was 18 or 19, Orazio managed to marry Gentileschi off. Her husband was Pier Antonio Stiatesi, a fellow artist. Once wed, she and her new husband moved to Pier Antonio's hometown of Florence, where she became the first woman to be accepted into the prestigious Academy of Art and Drawing. She also gained the patronage of the Grand Duchess Christina of Lorraine and the Grand Duke of Tuscany, Cosimo II de' Medici. It's also notable that she only learned to read and write once she had left her father's household and was living in Florence. Acceptance into the Academy of Art and Drawing allowed her the freedom to purchase art supplies and to sign her own contracts without her husband's permission. She built and maintained friendly relations with her artistic contemporaries in Florence, became a successful court painter, and was an influential hand in the courtly culture of Florence during her time living there. She received one of her first major commissions in Florence for a fresco at Casa Buonarroti, the home of the legendary Michelangelo. She was tasked, along with a number of her male peers, to contribute a painting for the ceiling. The theme of each painting was the allegory of a virtue associated with Michelangelo, and Gentileschi was assigned inclination. Some of the research I've done suggests Gentileschi was pregnant while she was working on the piece in 1615, and other sources claim she was recovering from giving birth. I'm guessing it's likely both were true, given the timeline of this piece spans 2 years, 1615 and 1616, when she was 21 and 22. In addition to that little nugget of trivia, financial records indicate Gentileschi was paid 3 times more than her male contemporaries who also produced works for this project. Lastly, in regards to this piece, Inclination is just one of many works created by Gentileschi in which she appears to have slyly painted herself as the allegory. Gentileschi gave birth to 5 children during her 8 years in Florence, although sadly 3 of them died within a year of being born. One son, Cristofano, passed away before he turned 5. Only her daughter Prudencia, born in 1618 when Gentileschi was 24, survived to adulthood. A collection of 36 letters discovered in 2011 documents a passionate love affair between Gentileschi and Florentine nobleman Francesco Maria de Niccolo Marenghi. The truly wild thing about this is her husband Pier Antonio not only knew about the affair and tolerated it, he used Gentileschi's love letters to correspond with Marenghi himself. It's probable that he put up with it because Maringhi was very wealthy, and Pier Antonio's evident lack of budgeting skills meant he was living with some significant financial duress. Gentileschi left Florence for Rome in 1620 with her daughter Prudentia and without her husband. Rumors of her affair had begun to spread in the Florentine court, and between that and continuing financial troubles, she likely figured she had a better shot of success back in her hometown. Her correspondence with Maringhi dried up shortly after her move, and no further mentions of Pier Antonio are made after 1623, indicating she had little or nothing to do with her husband after that year. Gentileschi painted in the Baroque style, which was the predominant technique during her lifetime. The Baroque style is typically more energetic than the classical restraint of the Renaissance. For example, classical art depicts a scene in the moment before the event, demonstrated here. Baroque art depicts the moment of action. The more violent, the better. Speaking of violent narratives, let's talk about this saucy little number and the painting that likely inspired it. The woman with the sword is Judith, a young widow from the city of Bethulia. Her accomplice is her handmaiden Abra, and the man being beheaded is the Assyrian general Holofernes. Beset by the Assyrian army, Bethulia was teetering on the edge of surrender. In a heroic act of bravery, the widow Judith infiltrated the Assyrian camp under the pretense that she had valuable information for the army's leadership, which gained her access to Holofernes' tent. The Assyrian general was so struck by Judith's beauty, he intended to wine and dine her, but Judith's charms were so powerful that Holofernes drank, as the story goes, far more than he had ever drank in his life. Seizing their opportunity, Judith and Abra killed the man. The moment of his death is pretty obviously what Gentileschi has rendered. She painted an earlier version in 1611 and 1612, the years of her rape and trial, when she was 17 and 18. There is written record of her testimony during the trial, which reveals she wanted to kill her rapist and may have menaced him with a knife immediately after the deed. There is also record that Orazio had a female tenant, Tuzia, who not only granted Gentileschi's rapist access to her living space, but also ignored her subsequent cries for help. Rendering Judith accomplishing what she could not, and with the aid of a female confidant whom Gentileschi lacked, probably helped her to process the trauma of being raped. Many art historians note that Gentileschi's 1611 Judith as well as her 1620 Judith both strongly resemble the artist. The piece was undoubtedly inspired by Caravaggio's rendition of the same subject. Certainly there are many similarities between the two. The framing of Judith's left hand grasping Holofernes' hair to hold him in place, while her right hand severs his head, the dramatic gush of spilled blood, and the deep contrast of light and shadow all carry over to Gentileschi's work. But I think it's pretty clear Gentileschi has improved on the composition in every possible way. In my very obviously subjective opinion, Caravaggio's Judith looks like a little girl whose grandmother is forcing her to do an unpleasant chore. Although Judith is the hero of the story, everything from her facial expression to her body language is passive and detached. She leans away from the spurting blood while still somehow managing to sever a man's head. Her brow is furrowed with what looks like confusion. Everything from her posture to her expression evokes pity in the viewer. Poor Judith, why does she have to do something so awful? She's clearly not even sure what she's doing or why she's doing it. In glaring contrast, Gentileschi's Judith is a mature woman whose motivation, determination, and objective are crystal clear. She is obviously the heroine in this scene, supported and assisted in her task and goal by her companion. The two women work together to meet their goal, the handmaiden applying the full force of her body weight to stymie Holofernes' struggle, as Judith puts her full weight into the severing motion. Gentileschi's artistic growth could be traced between her two paintings. She has corrected and improved the somewhat awkward anatomy of the man, reducing the size of his head to achieve a more proportionate figure. She has also included more of the man's supine body, but I think the goal in doing that was likely to adjust the composition so that Judith's hand is placed in the center of the canvas. Her 1620 version also introduced the spray of blood from the man's severed artery and a bracelet adorning Judith's wrist. The figure in the bracelet is the Greek goddess Artemis, whose divine portfolio includes chastity and the guarding thereof. Its presence has led historians to conclude that Gentileschi strongly identified with Judith, although I would have guessed that just the act of painting herself into Judith's role should have made that obvious. After leaving Florence and her husband for Rome in 1620, Gentileschi's financial troubles eased and she was not hurting for work. Unlike her predecessor Lavinia Fontana, she did not have the good fortune of papal patronage, but this didn't seem to make too much difference to her income. As she had in Florence, Gentileschi built friendly working relationships with her artistic contemporaries in Rome, and through this network was able to make plenty of connections with wealthy patrons. One such contemporary was French artist Simon Vouillet. The two worked closely together in a professional manner, and Vouillet painted this absolutely stunning portrait of Gentileschi sometime between 1623 and 1625. There isn't a lot of documentation that shows Gentileschi's movement at the tail end of the 1620s, but what can be scraped together shows she spent about 3 years living in Venice. As far as can be determined, Gentileschi lived the rest of her life separated from her husband, raising their daughter by herself and living on the income from her commissions. When she was 37 in 1630, she moved to Naples. It is speculated that she might have been invited by the Duke of Alcala, who owned 3 of her paintings and was obviously a fan of her work. Her move to Naples marked the first time she was commissioned to work on cathedral paintings. She completed The Birth of St. John the Baptist circa 1635. This painting was one of a 6-piece collaboration with 2 other artists, Massimo Stanzione and Paolo Finoglia, destined for display in the Hermitage of San Juan Bautista in Madrid. The focus of Gentileschi's paintings shifted from secular to religious scenes during this time, as she took on a number of commissions from Spanish patrons and churches. It's fun to note, though, that Gentileschi's Birth of St. John focuses on the lady neighbors and maidservants of John's elderly parents rather than on the miracle of the story. It's a very secular scene with some religious flavor sprinkled in. When she was 45 in 1638, Gentileschi was invited to the court of Charles I of England. Once there, she reunited with her father, though there don't really seem to be any records of how that reunion went. Based on what is known, she had not seen him for 17 years, as he had left Rome shortly after she returned to it in 1621. He had since become a court painter for the king, who was an avid art collector. Father and daughter worked together on a fresco in the Queen's House, Greenwich, for Queen Henrietta Maria. Orazio died aged 75 only a year later in 1639. Gentileschi painted this self-portrait as the allegory of painting while in England circa 1638 when she was 45. It's oil on canvas and 98.6 centimeters by 75.2 centimeters or 38.8 by 29.6 inches. Much like Elisabetta Serrani's self-portrait of the same title, which would be painted 20 years later in 1658, Gentileschi took direction from the Italian iconographer Cesare Ripa's description of the allegory. A beautiful woman with full black hair, disheveled and twisted in various ways, with arched eyebrows that show imaginative thought. The mouth covered with a cloth tied behind the ears, with a chain of gold at her throat from which hangs a mask, and has written in front imitation. She holds in her hand a brush, and in the other the palette, with clothes of evanescently covered drapery. Her interpretation of this description lacks the mouth-covering cloth, which I've read was likely included in Ripa's description to indicate that the beautiful female allegory ought to be silent. I'm not surprised Gentileschi and Serrani omitted it. Gentileschi eventually returned to Naples and spent the remainder of her life there. The year of her death is uncertain, but as of this recording in 2023, art historians suspect that she died in 1656, which would have been the year she turned 63. Although she had great success as an artist during her lifetime, she was, as is depressingly common, mostly forgotten after her death. Many of her works were attributed for a time to her father. Her rape and her participation in the subsequent trial were well known enough that she was regarded as a curiosity during her lifetime, but gossip about that scandal likely also faded after her death. The renewed interest in the artist and her work in the present are encouraging. Her contribution to the Western art canon is significant not only because of the quality of her art, but because of the subjects she chose to depict and the perspective she painted them from. So, regarding my own attempt at this portrait, I have come to believe that recording myself painting has probably been one of the best learning tools I could have given myself. The shift from actively painting to passively observing the process offers a completely different point of view, which I'm starting to find invaluable. At one point, I was ready to call the face good enough, as I have in the past, but after reviewing the video, I realized there were a few easy adjustments I could make to improve the final product, so I went back in and kept painting. With that said, this is a wild angle to paint a face, and Gentileschi has made it look so simple. I like to think she painted herself from this angle in order to clown on the folks in her time who like to claim that women can't paint. I've painted this portrait once before, at the end of October, when I first began working on this series. My original plan had been to talk about Gentileschi in my first art history video, but I decided to wait until I'd made a few others to get a better feel for creating this sort of content. I'm really glad I did, because not only do I feel more confident in the scripts I'm writing, the 4-month delay has also given me a chance to improve by a lot. I still struggled with her face, but I was able to get both more realistic proportions and closer to the original this time. There's still a lot of room for improvement, but I'm not blind to the improving I've already done. Thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and hitting subscribe. I'll be back in a couple of weeks with a new master study. Next time, I'm returning to 19th century France to talk about another amazing Impressionist painter, Bertha Morisot. I hope to see you then.